Good morning. Today is Good Friday, God's Friday, as the Old English called it. Today we're going to read a bit from chapter 19 of the Gospel according to John, starting with 16b, the end of 16, and reading through 22. So they took Jesus, and he went out bearing his own cross to the place called the place of a skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him two others, one on either side, and Jesus between them. Pilate also wrote an inscription and put it on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this inscription, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Aramaic, in Latin, and in Greek. So the chief priest of the Jews said to Pilate, "Do not write the King of the Jews, but rather, this man said, 'I'm the King of the Jews.'" Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." Never forget when Dr. Story was trying to teach us Greek in seminary, and there's something about the way that text is grammatically, "What I have written, and he was explaining all this and just kept saying that. We thought it was great. Pilate teaching us Greek grammar. Well, Greek was the common language of the empire. Everybody spoke some Greek, so if you wanted to get along with somebody that you didn't know their particular language, you tried what's called Common Greek. Aramaic, of course, is what we typically call Hebrew, but it was the common language of the Palestine and the areas to the east of that. In some later times it's called Syriac, but it's a Syrian, Aramaic, Hebrew, sort of Semitic language that was very common. And the people would have spoken it. Who could read it? Not that many people, we don't know. And Latin, of course, was the language of the empire and the language of that Pilate would have used officially. So Pilate interviewing Jesus in Greek, in Aramaic? Certainly Pilate would not have learned any Aramaic much beyond a word or two. He wouldn't have needed to or wanted to. Greek, yeah, so that would have been the language that they spoke to each other. All of which is kind of beside the point for Good Friday. Good Friday is the day that Jesus goes to the cross and is crucified, thereby demonstrating for us the love of God that never stops, the love of God that goes to the very depths. No matter how low you go, God is already there. Jesus is waiting for you when you get there. No matter where you go, Jesus is waiting for you when you get there. You cannot escape the presence. You can't escape the presence of Jesus, no matter where you go. He is everywhere in this creation. It's created through him and will be redeemed through him and brought back to God the Father. And God will be all in all eventually. So what we see here is the act of God's self-giving love that conquers death and brings us all back to God in a different way. It's a solemn day, so take some time and just ponder it. Sometimes we have services around noon where we talk about the 7 last words of Christ. Other times we do other things. Tonight in our community we're having a community Tenebrae service. We had one last night at our church, but tonight it's at a different church and it's for the community. Whatever you do, remember that this is a special day in the history of the church. And this is the day, without today, Easter makes no sense. I mean, risen from the grave, well, so what? Well, he had to die first. Oh, okay, so he died and then was raised. Yeah, that makes some sense. So Easter is dependent on Good Friday for its meaning, I think. And so today we remember his crucifixion. And let's not pretty it up, let's not make a fancy cross and think, oh, dear Jesus died. It was bloody. It was brutal. All those movies from the 60s where Jesus is just hanging there, and go look at Mel Gibson's movie where Jesus is beaten half to death and then hung on the cross and can barely breathe. That's accurate. It's terrible, but it's accurate. So watch that movie if you can. And whatever you do to celebrate today, remember that Jesus died today. Well, insofar as you can, then, despite that message, have a great day. And we will see you tomorrow.